Dan's not going to like me after this. My God, he's going to hate me. Hi, everyone. So, continuing along the series of Good, Bad, and Ugly, today we're going to talk about D'Agostino. Just a preface about D'Agostino for some of you who don't know. Dan D'Agostino started a company called Krell back in the, I want to say, late 70s, early 80s. And at the time, the most successful, most popular solid-state amplifier that you could buy in the high end was a company called Mark Levinson, still called Mark Levinson. And that was the brand that Dan wanted to compete against. He felt that he could do a much better job. And so he started making these amplifiers like the little Krell KSA 50, and that cemented his reputation. Here's a little 50-watt solid-state Class A amplifier that sounded absolutely gorgeous. And then from there he made the 100, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And then around 2008, I guess, during the Great Credit Recession, there was a big fight. The shareholders of Krell kicked Dan and his wife out of Krell, and after a few years, Dan decided to start a company called D'Agostino. So that's how D'Agostino started, right about 2012, 2013. And the first product was actually a monoblock called the M300, the Momentum M300. The latest version is called the M400 MXV. They look very similar, but basically that's what they were. And what's fascinating is that the Momentums are a tiny little amplifier physically compared to what Dan used to make under the Krell umbrella. When people think of Krell, they think of at least those ones. Big, ginormous amplifiers, solidly built, heat sinks everywhere, pure Class A, and so on. And yet, the first product that Dan made under the D'Agostino name was an amplifier that was maybe a quarter the height, quite narrow, and roughly about 14 or so, 13 inches deep. Not very big, but heavy. Oh my goodness, and very striking looking. Well, that's how D'Agostino got started, and of course, fast forward 10, 11 years later, it is one of the more successful high-end electronics companies on the market. So let's talk about the good. Sonically phenomenal. I've been very, very fortunate over the years to have owned, represented, traded in, listened to some of the very finest electronics that have been available. And I would easily rank the D'Agostino at the very top, or certainly among the very, very top. And no question in my mind. It is a combination of all the things that Krell was famous for, the incredibly tight control on the bass with wallops, but also now having a musicality, a richness that the later Krells didn't quite have. There's a certain organic sense without being tubey. There's a richness without being slow or thick. It's almost like a Goldilocks kind of a sound, almost perfect, and obviously not ever perfect, but just absolutely beautiful, and with absolutely wonderful transparency and detail and speed. Again, all the things that Krell was famous for, just so much more refined, so much more evolved. Maybe that's the right word, evolved. That's the sound. And then I know the looks are controversial, at least as far as the Momentum and the Relentless series are concerned, but I happen to really like it. I like the what has been termed the steampunk aesthetics. If any of you know the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it's sort of like that. It's got this very interesting Cyclops big meter in the front. We've got one over here, combined at the same time with this very striking look that says, I'm here, look at me, as opposed to the more austere products that oftentimes you'll see. So it definitely makes a statement. Very science fiction-like. And interesting as a side note, Dan is a big fan of science fiction. When he named Krell, for many of you, you might know, was this race of super intelligent, super powerful alien beings that lived on this planet, and from the movie called Forbidden Planet. And he liked it, so he called his company Krell. I remember once talking with Dan about why he never called Krell D'Agostino. He says, well, I didn't want the company to sound like we were selling pizza. So that was his answer. I also like the fact that the electronics have two finishes. You've got that silver with the copper/gold finish, which I personally love, and especially for the store, because we want our demo products to stand out. A black with copper, black with gold motif is truly stunning. I never thought I would like black very much because I've had black for so many years with electronics, and they almost always seem to sort of blend into the background. But with the black and the gold, wow, it looks gorgeous. So that's the aesthetics. Functionally will drive any speaker I can possibly think of. I can't think of a speaker that it cannot drive and drive with control. The other good is the Momentum and the Relentless series have been upgradable. So for example, if you bought the original Momentum M300 monoblocks that I was talking about, that the company debuted all those years ago, when Dan introduced the Momentum M400s, you could send it back to get them updated. And the cost of the upgrade relative to what the improvement is actually quite inexpensive. And you can also do that with the MXV. So, and the upgrade, by the way, is not just a simple little thing. They take the cover off and remove virtually everything and put all new guts in it. That's how severe, if you will, how comprehensive the upgrade is. So it's nice to know that the Momentum and the Relentless are both upgradable, because it keeps the investment of your product in, right, as opposed to having to sell it and then buy another one and so on. It doesn't apply to progression, unfortunately. Okay, and then finally, the way they're built today, as compared to the late Krells, are much simpler in that you've got basically boards, and the boards are all attached with ribbon cables, and very little soldering or unsoldering has to be done in order to remove boards. You've got some Allen keys, Allen screws I should say, you remove, and then basically the board comes out. You put a new board in if you need to do any servicing, and basically you're done. You adjust the bias and you're done. So service in general is much simpler now than perhaps it was towards the latter part of when Dan was head of Krell. Okay, now let's talk about the bed. And I've got a big list. Dan's not going to like me after this. Okay, first of all, it's a lot of money. We're talking about a lot of money. There's no way around it. The progression is still relatively reasonable as far as price is concerned. It's a lot of money, but compared to the competition, in many ways, it's not. You can certainly compare it to products like Griffin and Solution and lots of other wonderful, wonderful brands, and you will find that D'Agostino is certainly in that price range, but not necessarily much more, or in fact, in some cases, it'll be less, especially if you live in North America. So while it's a lot of money in totality, in comparison with the competition, it is more than comparable and certainly very competitive. All the products are heavy. I mean, even the integrated amps, the preamps, the power amps, oh my gosh, the progressions, the Momentums. When you look at the Momentums, they look tiny, right? I mean, they look tiny in comparison. But you pick one up and it's over 100 pounds, and it's very dense. It's not a big chassis, so it's very, very dense. So they are heavy. So another thing. The Progression and the Relentless are beasts. I mean, they're big amplifiers. So now the irony is that the Momentum is actually too small. I've actually had clients not buy the Momentum, even though they love the sound. I can think of one in particular, but I'll tell you the story in a second, where they come in, they are curious to see what the whole fuss is about, and they are blown away by the sound, but they won't buy it because it's not physically imposing or impressive enough. And it's important to them that what they spend their money on looks the part, which is unfortunately a shame. So I'll tell you the story. A number of years ago, a very good client of mine said, hey, I'm just back from my trip. What's the latest thing? And I told him about the Momentums. He said, okay, well, bring it over. Let's listen to it and see what we think. So again, unfortunately, the day that came, I was the only one available. So I lugged these amplifiers by myself. I'm not joking. This is a huge house. So to access the listening room, had to go on the side of the house, walk down a whole series of steps towards the back, turn around, go through the patio door. And I'm talking easily 500-600 feet of walking distance, and I had to physically carry it, and I didn't want to let it down, so I was hugging this amplifier, these two amplifiers, all the way from the van, all the way to the back, through his listening room, put it down, set it all up, and so on. I mean, I was breaking up a sweat big time. It's all ready, all warmed up. I call him up. He comes downstairs. Within a second of seeing the amp, he says, nope, not interested. I said, you haven't even heard it. He says, no. Look at how big this room is. And it's a ginormous room. Look at how big the speakers are. Ginormous speakers. These amps don't look right. And so without even listening, the audition was over. Now, I don't blame him. I'm just saying that is bad. Okay. The other bad is the Momentums are very hard to put on their dedicated stands. By the way, with the Momentums, you can buy the optional stand. I wouldn't recommend not to. In fact, I would recommend very strongly to buy the amp stands. They work. They do a great job. But anyway, to put the amp onto the stand is not easy. Even with two people, it's not easy because one person has to physically hold the amp. Ideally, you'd want to have three. So two people holding the amp up, and then the third person at the bottom guiding the amp onto the stand. And the reason why it's difficult is because the amp stand has these little tiny holes, if you will, or recesses cut out for the feet of the amp to sit in. And they have to go in precisely, otherwise it doesn't sit properly. So it's not easy. So, and oftentimes I've had to do it myself. So, another bad. Okay, now we talk about the internals. As I say, my God, he's going to hate me. Because the Momentum is very small physically, it was designed that way. Apparently, the story goes, when Dan was designing a new series of products for the company, one of the things he kept getting requests about was, could you design the electronics to be physically smaller? Because we have clients all over the world. Distributors from all over the world were saying, we have clients from all over, and oftentimes they live in condos. There are parts of the world that is very wealthy, but they just don't have real estate. And so the challenge was to make a superb sounding amplifier into a small chassis, and that's how the Momentum came about. Anyway, because it's so small, it's packed really, really tight inside. And when you take the cover off, if you ever do, you'll see the inside is really, really dense. To do any work inside is not easy. You have to remove a whole bunch of ribbon cables, and sometimes you have to take out one or two boards before you get to where you need to get to. So not easy for service. Now, of course, this is not really an issue for you as a consumer, but again, I'm just talking about the bads because I've had to do a couple of things to some of the amplifiers. Now, again, what I'm going to talk about for the next little while is purely cosmetic. Okay, has no bearing on the sound. At least I don't think so. The first time I saw the innards of an amplifier or electronics that blew me away was back at CES many decades ago. Spectral was exhibiting at the Consumer Electronics Show, and they had one of their preamplifiers with the plexiglass on the top so you could see the inside. And I remember looking at the thing and I took a breath. It was stunning. Gold traces, beautiful thick gold traces, perfectly parallel. Any circuit, any parts were all lined up perfectly. Resistors were lined up perfectly. The height of the leads were identical. They were all the same. And parts were at 90 degrees. It was just a work of art. I was so impressed. Now keep in mind, this was all done by hand. This is not done by some populating machine. So really, really impressed. When you take the cover off of D'Agostino, yeah, it's not pretty. It doesn't look ugly. It's just not what I wish the company would do at this level of cost. It should be better. Now, I'm going to say, they're not the only ones. A lot of high-end companies, again, handmade, looks like they're handmade. You can tell. It doesn't have quite the same kind of precision that I would love to see. I mean, I would love to be able to take the cover off, put a piece of thick glass or something, ventilated glass, and show how beautiful the insides are. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite pass the muster in as far as I'm concerned, as far as the internals cosmetically. The manual, one of my bugaboos about this industry. We sell these incredible products, speakers, amplifiers, CD players, whatever it is. And what you get for a manual a lot of times is this plastic folder with the plastic edge that holds the pages inside, and it's printed pages. My gosh, seriously, manufacturers, do a better job. It doesn't take much. Just have it bound, printed up to make it look like a nice book. And also, wouldn't it be nice if you had spent all this money, whether it's the progression or the momentum or the relentless, to have a nice letter from the manufacturer, from the designer, whoever it is, right? And I'm not talking specifically about D'Agostino, but in general, from the design team that says, "Dear Mr. Client," or "Dear Client," or "Dear," whatever it is. If you can get the name of the client who buys it, even better, right? From the dealer. You know, we are so appreciative and delighted for you that you have chosen to purchase our product. We spent years engineering, developing, and designing these products from the bottom of our heart. We are extremely proud of it, and we hope this product will bring you years of joy and ecstasy. A little letter like that included with it, with pictures of the factory, with pictures of the design and production team, maybe a signature on a part of the amplifier somewhere or the speaker somewhere. You know, when you buy, for example, the legend goes, when you buy a Mercedes AMG and you take the top, you take the engine cover off, you can see the signature of the person who assembled that engine. I mean, a little plaque, that's a wonderful thing. I think that audio manufacturers should do more of this kind of stuff. I know it's cosmetic, but it would go a long ways to satisfying a sense of engagement, a sense of joy of ownership of the product. Anyway, hopefully they'll listen. And by the way, if you guys agree with me, I'd love for you to write in the comments and say, hey, you know, do a better job. If you don't agree, that's fine too, because if you're happy with sheets of paper like this and the dual tang, hey. Okay, this one bothers me. The binding post on the back of the Momentum only takes spades, not bananas. So I remember doing an install for the amplifier and brought the amplifiers all the way up, a 3-hour drive to the client's house, get there and uncrate the amplifiers. The client is just so excited, and so was I. Take it all off, put the amplifier on the stand, finally get it in the stand, not easily by myself. And then when it came to connecting of the speaker wires, he's using very, very expensive speaker wires with bananas. I look and go, oh no, it's bananas. They won't fit. We jury-rigged it so it worked, but I had to, anyway, long story. They should have banana options. It's a simple thing, guys. This is the last of the bad. I warned you, there's a lot. On the silver finish products, right? On the back of the amplifiers or the preamplifier, the lettering is finished in a very light font, so there's no contrast. Now, as you can tell, I'm basically blind, right? I've got the Asian curse. We all have bad eyes. So I'm installing this thing. I can't see what I'm plugging into. What does it say? CD, server, DAC? I can't tell because the lettering is so faint, there's no contrast. Now, the black electronics have great contrast, and that's not the issue. It's the silver ones. Now, on the one hand, I can see why they chose that, because the lettering is very delicate. It's very refined looking. But on the back, the job of the lettering is to be strong enough in contrast so that whoever's doing the connection can see what they're doing. So, maybe there's a way to find a happy compromise. But the silver ones, my gosh, they are terrible when it comes to lettering. Now let's get to the ugly. QC is not great. I hate to say this, but it's true. For a company that charges as much money for their products as they do, QC should be better. Now, again, I have to say, I'm not talking about huge numbers of failures or anything like that. These are relatively minor things, but they shouldn't happen, at least in my opinion, okay? So, one pair of progressions that I received, I had to drive 5.5 hours, actually 6 hours to the client, and of course another 6 hours back, plus time installing everything, setting it all up, and so on and so forth. So we're talking at least almost a 24-hour day. Not quite, but a long time. 18 hours. So I drive all the way there, brand new amplifiers, progression monoblocks, all the way there, unpack everything, looks gorgeous, hook it all up, connect everything, turn on the first piece of music, and instantly I knew, oh my God, one of the amps was internally connected in opposite phase to the other amplifier. Somebody screwed up. Oh my God. I mean, this is a simple test. I don't know who did the final QC, but they really screwed up. And in this particular case, it was a horrendous thing, because now I'm 6 hours away. So what I did was, instead, on the outside, reverse the speaker wire, and then I promised him that I would deal with it. I ordered another set of amplifiers. Now, these amplifiers are, I don't know, $50,000 or $60,000. I can't remember the numbers. I'm not good with numbers. Allison will overlay the amount. I ordered a new set. When they arrived, I drove them back to his house, replaced his amplifiers with my new ones, took them back to the office, took the cover off, looked inside, saw where the issue was, and reversed the issue. So that was one story. Another one, an integrated amplifier came in, brand new, delivered to a client, takes it home, and one channel is buzzing. Now there's music coming through, but it's buzzing. There's obviously some sort of a weird situation happening. And again, I don't know how that passed QC. Shouldn't have. Now, could it have happened during shipping? Possibly, I don't know. All I know is that it shouldn't have happened, right? And then the last thing that I can think of is that I know of at least 2 remote controls. They're gorgeous remotes, by the way, but 2 of the Momentum preamp remote controls were draining batteries much faster than they should have. And apparently the reason was because on the circuit board, there are 2 leads that come out, or there are a few leads that come out, and they didn't snip it they didn't snip in enough so that the leads are long enough to touch the remote control's metal enclosure, and so we're shorting out, and so it's draining the batteries. So little things like this. Oh, one more. Early on, the first products that D'Agostino made, the M300 monoblocks, the stereo amplifier, and the preamplifier, if you ever see them, they have this stunning, absolutely stunning glossy finish. I mean, it's shockingly glossy. And the way that they got that finish was the whoever was doing the metal work essentially painted that surface. So it just, stunningly beautiful. Anyway, problem is that finish is very, very, very soft. I mean, a slight exaggeration, but you can take a brand new microfiber cloth and clean it, and if you're not careful, you'd scratch it. That's how soft the surface is. To this day, I have approach avoidance when it comes to cleaning D'Agostino products, because without knowing, we started scratching the amplifiers, and we didn't know that there was a scratch, so we would, oh, look, there's a mark. So we would, try and buff it out, and it would get worse. It's like, oh my God. And there's no way to buff it or fix it. So when you scratch it, it's scratched. So that was a bad. Now, thankfully, the new finishes don't have that paint anymore, so it's no longer really an issue. But if you are looking for used D'Agostinos from that period of time, be careful. You will see some of them having scratches, and that's the reason why. Okay, so anyway, that wraps up this video. For those of you who own D'Agostinos, who have listened to D'Agostinos, I would love to read your comments. Put them in the comment below. And again, if you agree with me that manufacturers in general should really do a better job of their manuals, please put them in the comments as well, or disagree with me. It's okay. I'd love to see what you guys think. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.